welcome to this episode of the Massaro Method. Now, I am so excited to welcome my good friend, Ukrainian MP Alexei Gончаренко. So Alexei, he is very active, very outspoken Ukrainian MP who has been to the United States. He's been all around the world. He was recently in Davos, advocating the Ukrainian cause, working very hard to get arms, to get sanctions, to get all sorts of stuff so that the Ukrainians can beat back this genocidal Russian invasion. He is also within the Rada, that is the Ukrainian parliament. He is the head of the Caucasus Caucus, and there's another caucus, right, Alexei? What else are you the head of there?
Belarus caucus, it's also important.
The Belarus caucus? Okay, yes, and he's been very active on all sorts of issues from Kosovo to Moldova, and I think we're going to try to get into all this stuff. So Alexei has been able to be, I think, exceptionally active for a member of the Rada and have an exceptional foreign policy role, which is actually, of course, how we know one another. So Alexei, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you very much, Paul, and I just want to say thank you again from millions of Ukrainians for all work that you are doing, not just for our country, but for the whole free world. And I am absolutely delighted to call you my friend and to be today in Massaro Method. That's a big honor for me. And thank you again for what you're doing.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you. So before we begin, of course, I'd like to just say, please share, like, comment, subscribe, get these videos seen and get these voices heard. So Alexei, I think let's start it off actually with some recent news. So before we started here, we were talking about Moldova. And recently, President Maya Sandu in Moldova has had this press conference and talked about how the Russians attempted a coup in Moldova. So could you walk us through this and how you've engaged on Moldova in the past and what this could mean for Ukraine?
Yeah, I think this is a very important topic, and I'm really watching it very closely because I represent Odessa region in the Ukrainian parliament. My constituency is bordered with Moldova. And for Odessa, it's just 1 hour driving to Moldovan border. And for this part of Ukraine, for the southern part of Ukraine, Moldova was one of the first of shelters where hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians came when the invasion started. Also, this is a kind of a window to the world because many thousands of Ukrainians are using Moldova territory and Chisinau airport to come to the world and then come back. And also, that is one of the countries to which we, together with Moldova, Ukraine, today is a candidate to European Union. So we are moving together, and definitely for us, it's important to know that Moldova is secure and Russia is not controlling it. And I want to remind to all our viewers and listeners that today part of Moldova, which is called Transnistria, is occupied by Russia from the beginning of 1990s. So after Moldova announced its independence, and this enclave is absolutely controlled by Russia and is a problem, security problem for all these part of European continent. So yeah, as we know, Russian Empire cannot stop because, you know, like Russian Empire and in general tyranns, I call them geopolitical maniacs. They can't stop. It's not a case that, you know, like somebody say, okay, let us give something to Russia. It's the same how to say, let us give a maniac to kill one woman, and that's all, and he will stop. No, I mean that is a hunger, and then will be another. So the same with Russia. For them, it's important to destabilize Moldova and to install their puppet regime there. They wanted to occupy Moldova just absolutely openly, like they did in Ukraine. But for this, they needed to take Odessa, my native city, to get to the borders. And then it wasn't their plan to attack Moldova. That's 100%. But they failed. Yep. Now, especially after they retreated from Kherson, they lost their Platzdarm on the right bank of Dnieper River. So they can't reach Moldova militarily. So they decided to attack Moldova in hybrid way through some coup d'etat, with some political unrest. They're investing millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars in this. And Ukrainian intelligence received some details of this plan, which we gave to Moldova, to our friends. And President Maya Sandu, she announced that yes, everything was confirmed. And now we have a change of Moldovan government. Yesterday in Moldova, airspace was closed for a part of the day because of some drones in the airspace. So you understand that situation there is quite dangerous. And definitely Moldova is also under this malign influence of, at least attempt of influence of Russia.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of amazing Russia's making this attempt even as it's being pushed back and defeated in Ukraine. I think it sort of came as a bit of a surprise given, but I think it also demonstrates just how dangerous Russia is and remains, that even though Ukraine has surprised, I think, the entire world with its incredibly valiant defense of itself in the free world, that Russia is still a problem, a huge problem, and still invests really heavily in these sorts of operations. And of course, I mean, the renewed offensive in Ukraine, right? I mean, Ukraine, although it is successfully defending itself, it is up against hundreds of thousands of additional Mobics right now as we speak. So I mean, it's not a foregone conclusion that Russia will be defeated and fall apart or whatever. I mean, it's not even necessarily the likely scenario. We really need to be working toward this goal.
It will not happen itself. And just with our work and big efforts, this will happen. But without this, the whole world will be endangered. And that's why we don't have any other option than to do it together.
Yes, absolutely. So I think obviously the way that Russia has invaded Ukraine and tried to conquer Ukraine over this last year, and the way that it's now attempted again to destabilize Moldova, these are both reflections of, years of Russian imperial behavior, decades of Russian imperial behavior toward its neighbors, but then also within, right? And this is something you actually focus on is Russia's internal empire. Is that
absolutely?
Is that
right? And that is the way Russian empire lives. They are not interested at all in in developing their territory. It was, I just tweeted it on my Twitter. There was very funny but very symbolic news from Russian state TV, Vesti, and they made some news about the toilet. The wooden toilet, which was stolen by some of the men in Chelyabinsk region in Ural Mountains. Yeah, so just imagine this. So it's 21st century. Russia is the biggest country in the world, the richest from the point of view of resources. And in Ural, which is like you can find the whole Mendeleev table there in the underground of Ural Mountains, they one of men, because in his house it's so cold, they don't have heating systems. So he came and stole the wooden toilet from the medical, like a small hospital in this.
A wooden toilet
from a medical hospital in this village, because they don't have sanitation there. So they need to go outside and now they can't. The whole village has no place where to go, because one of the villagers stole the toilet and put it into his oven. Just imagine the smell what was there. I think this is real Ruski Dukh, but he is like, this is a Russian, Russian aroma. And they did it. I mean, just imagine this country. So they're not interested in developing their country at all. The only thing they're interested in is to conquer new territories, then again. So before, and I am absolutely sure in this, that before Russian Empire will be dissolved, there will be no security, at least in this part of the planet. That will be a constant threat. And that's the way how they live. So what we need to finish with this empire. And it's something which not everybody in the free world understand, because like Kissinger made in his article for Spectator, he said, yes, the Russia is evil, but it is eternal part of equilibrium, Russian empire. So yes, it is evil, but this empire was, it is, and it will be. But who said this? I mean, why? Ottoman Empire disappeared, German Empire disappeared, And who benefited more than Germans from the fact that there is no more German empire, but is normal Germany? So the same with Russia. Russia is the last colonial empire in Europe, and historically it's like a dinosaurus moving somewhere near us, because it should disappear. And I think that will happen after their colonial war, which will be unsuccessful against Ukraine, and then they should disappear. That's why you mentioned that I chair a caucus for Caucasus in Ukrainian parliament, because part of Russian colonial empire is these nations in Caucasus suppressed by Russia: Chechens, Circassians, Dagestani, and others. And just remind how for years Chechen people were fighting against Russia, and they won the first war against Russian army. Like Chechnya was 1 million population, a tiny kind of like a republic by territory, 1 million people against the whole big Russia, and they won the first war. But after the Second World War, Chechen War, Russia suppressed Chechnya. They organized genocide of Chechen people. They killed 1 of 5 Chechens. Yep. Just 200,000 from 1 million were killed. Another 200,000 fled away. And after this, they suppressed Chechnya. It shows us what a potential these nations in Caucasus they have for their freedom.
Well, absolutely. And this Chechen genocide, the Chechen wars were viewed from the West as, it's just an internal Russian dispute. It's fine. Russia isn't an empire. It's what it has to do. And I think you're absolutely correct in that, of course, in the West, the decolonial lens is almost only applied to former Western empires, and is always applied with a mind to race and overseas holdings and things like this. And it's hard, I think, for a number of reasons. For that reason, but also because of just bags of money and gas, for the Western mind to see Russia as an empire. I think now that is happening a little bit. But I mean, what do we need to do, and who do we need to listen to get our policy right? Because I even think back to 91. I mean, the United States went out of its way. I mean, including in Ukraine, in the Chicken Kiev speech to try to hold the empire together, and we don't want to make that mistake again.
That is so important. That's why we need these discussions, and I'm very thankful to you that you are making such discussions like we are doing today about what will be after Russian Empire. That the fact, I want to be frank. This solution of Russian Empire will cause challenges, definitely. Who will control mass destruction weaponry? What will be in North Caucasus? What will be in Siberia? Maybe China will try to fill the gap and to fill the vacuum which will appear. And so there are a lot, it can be a bloodshed with millions of people or millions of refugees and so on. So the challenges are big, but the challenge of Russian Empire surviving is bigger, because this is the country which just challenged everybody on the planet. So we need to speak about it. We need to create politics about what to do. Even if somebody is saying that, you're right, in 1991, President Bush, elder, came to Kiev, and he tried to say that Ukraine should not leave the Soviet Union, but it was too late to do anything. I mean, the Soviet Union was collapsing. And the same here. Even if the world will try to help for Russian Empire to survive, it's not the fact that they will succeed in this, because Putin is doing everything to destroy this country completely. He is moving these to the end. And what should be done, that the free world should be prepared for this, to have a policies, to know what to do. And big part of this, I think, should be a discussion in the idea of denuclearization of Russia. That whenever, we don't know how Russian Empire this time will break up. Like it was 100 years ago, that was bloodshed, and some smaller countries, then Russian Empire reconquered some of them. But for example, not Finland, not Poland, but for example, Ukraine, they reconquered that. 30 years ago, Soviet Union collapsed again, And this time it was quite clear cut, you know. I mean, that was not so big bloodshed, even I can say a very small one. And there were new countries with their borders, and it was like more or less normal. But what will be this time? We don't know, but no difference how it will go. One of the aims for the world will be that Russia should be denuclearized. Because of their behavior, they do not deserve anymore the right to be in nuclear club. Because the whole idea of nuclear club is never ever even blackmail with this. It's exactly what Russia is doing. So they should be denuclearized.
Absolutely correct. I mean, it's going to be a major challenge, though, right? I mean, it's funny because what you say, I think what we're going through is sort of a devil you know versus devil you don't, you know, and it's always easier to stick with the status quo, you know, and the status quo is, why can't Moscow just take care of its, you know, surrounding area and whatever, and the reality is it can't. I mean, it's hard. It's a hard thing to do because we're living in a fantasy world, you know, where we've just wanted Russia to take care of things,
thinking,
you know.
But I want to give you one example, I think, which should be quite inspiring for us. It's Yugoslavia. Because what it was Yugoslavia? It was a Serbia, which was controlling big part of Balkans. It was a kind of a small empire, I can tell. Small empire in Balkans. Then it collapsed and new countries appeared. And it happened that these countries became a very important part of the free world. Croatia, Slovenia, so no questions about it. Yes, there was a bloodshed in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and still Bosnia and Herzegovina is a difficult place. Yes, still Serbia is a problem, and we see all what's going on with Kosovo, between Serbia and Kosovo, that Serbs also like a Trojan horse of Russia in the middle of Europe. Yes, we have these problems. But in any way, these problems are smaller than if to imagine that now the whole Balkans would be controlled by Serbia being an ally of Russia. Just imagine this.
Yeah. Well, it's great. I mean, it's a great point. I mean, one of the things I think about is that like just a few months ago, Serbia was threatening to invade Kosovo. I mean, it was basically saying, you know, like, we're going to take advantage of this Russian invasion and we're going to invade Kosovo. And then the NATO mission was like, no, you aren't. Yeah. And then they didn't, you know, cause you're exactly right. Like, I mean, it's much easier to face down. I mean, it's kind of like the size of the threat, even, you know, like if we would reduce the size of the threat, the problem is Russia is always right. And then they can't actually be as threatening, just even if they had the same mentality as Russia, because you're right. I mean, Serbia does have the same mentality as Russia, basically. It's funny. Russians want to say the Ukrainians are little Russians, but the Serbs are little Russians. I mean, they really are, like, they think in the same, sadly, for now, in the same way. But I mean, it's correct that it makes it easier to handle. Obviously, in some ways, you know, the Balkans region is not a wonderful example, because obviously one of the things that this administration is, and others I'm sure are thinking about is we don't want a Yugoslav breakup type scenario that leads to, you know, 10 years of war. I mean, I'm personally not sure how you avoid some level of internal conflict. I mean, we already see like Prigozhin and Shoigu, and I mean, they're already arming up. I mean, there seems to be like preparations for some sort of internal Russian war
with their private armies. That's what's happening now in Russia, and yeah, the probability of a civil war in Russia is very high, and it's not something that we are just sitting and predicting. But we saw it 100 years ago. That's exactly what had happened.
Exactly.
So if it happened once,
so history,
then there is a high probability that it will happen again.
Right, and the first time it happened, the Bolsheviks were basically able to reestablish the empire under this facade of communist ideology. This time we need to ensure that it actually I mean, look, that it ends or it doesn't. I guess that we don't help to preserve it. That's the big.
Yeah.
At least, yeah. Now, of course, there are the kind of like ethnic Russian parts of Russia, and then there's a number of,
Moravitsky.
People, yeah, and they were talking about this recently, the Poles, and like, yeah, Chechnya should be independent. Like it's a part of the. So I mean, where are you on that? I mean, when we think about kind of because there's, when you think about these autonomous republics and these, I mean, they do seem to be notionally different from the ethnic Russian parts of Russia.
They look completely different. They live different way of life. They have different culture, and they are prized for. Maybe again, not all of our viewers and listeners know, but the longest war which Russia had in its history was the Caucasian War in 19th century, which was like for more than 50 years. They were suppressed 50 years again, 50 years. And only after they organized genocide of Cherkessian people in 19th century, they finally suppressed these territories. But I mean, and that is not historically, not so long ago. So these people, and again, even about number of people. For example, somebody can, these like republics, they're really small. But I want to tell you, look at Estonia, which is 1.3 million population people. It's not a big country from the size and from population, but it's a great country today. Like a very important part of free world, a wonderful country, prosperous, with human rights, with the rule of law, with everything. So wonderful country. So why Dagestan, which has 3 million population, 2 times like Estonia, why can't they live?
Could be that too.
Why not?
I mean that's the beauty of the EU's project, right? Is it's able to, you can preserve sovereignty, which is really critical, preserve sovereignty and independence while also pooling your resources and your economic weight in order to, be able to swing above your weight while also maintaining that really critical sovereign piece, So it's like, in a sense, like the EU is, I mean, it's not an immediate solution, and it's like there's obviously issues with it, but it is the existing solution to how to create a big entity that can throw around its weight in the world while also maintaining the sovereignty of all these countries. It's which is, I mean, that's what an empire like Russia tries to do, right? I mean, it tries to take over these countries, thereby destroying their sovereignty, but also stealing all their resources.
And killing and so on. And especially it is striking when we remember that not so long ago, like Germany and France, which are like the core of the European Union today, they were in constant war with one another for centuries. But finally there was created a system where they can not just coexist, but to strengthen one another, and that's for benefit of everybody.
Yeah. So you could theoretically imagine not just, I mean, of course, Ukraine in the EU. That one's on its way, but Ukraine, Moldova. I mean, but why not Chechnya, Dagestan? Like all of these. Like, I mean, why not? And because it's like that's exactly what this bloc exists for. I mean, you could even one day imagine them in NATO, for that matter. I mean, there's really no reason that they shouldn't be, because again, these blocks exist for this. They exist to preserve sovereignty while also pooling resources. That's
exactly.
Kind of
and in general, I can tell you that I believe in this, and I'm sure you, and I know that you also believe in this, that the free world should expand. You can't stay on the on just and say, oh no, we will just have what we have. It will not work like this. Either the free world will expand or it will shrink. There is no other way.
Without a doubt, you can't be on the defensive. I mean, we've been on the defensive for 30 years now. We have been. We've just been trying to preserve our gains since '91, and we've been losing. I mean, up until the moment that the Ukrainians said no, fought and defended themselves. We have been losing. We have been on the back foot. So, I mean, I completely agree with you. So something else we work on, Alexei, that I wanted to touch on real quick is you've been advocating pretty heavily for closing sanctions loopholes. So tell us about this work. And I mean, this is kind of, I think, your, in a sense, chosen advocacy topic, and in some place you've really invested a lot of energy. So talk to us about this.
Yeah, thank you. And first of all, I would like to thank you because you are supporting enormously this coalition that we created together with representative.
With my other cap on, when I take off my podcaster cap and put on the
Helsinki Commission, and we are doing now a lot of job together, and Representatives Cohen and Wilson, and we have in our coalition already Canadian MP, head of the Security Committee joined us. We have UK MP, we have European Parliament, we have national parliaments of European countries, and we have me from Ukraine. So we're working together in order to close these loopholes, to synchronize sanctions. And that is very important because it can happen. Why it is important? I will make a step back because some people say, okay, these sanctions, but okay, one or two and other people, Putin's entourage people will be under sanctions. Will it change anything? And I can tell you that this is so important. Why? Because I am not sure, because we will see, but I'm not sure that Russia will be defeated on the battlefield. Because many times in Russian history, they collapsed before they were defeated on the battlefield. And Russian defeat on the battlefield costs tens of thousands of lives, maybe hundreds of thousands of lives. It's a very bloody process. But if we are increasing pressure on Putin entourage, and we are making them finally to think, wow, what should I do? To go with Putin to a disaster or to try to get rid of him? And in some point, the risk to go together with Putin can be higher than to get rid of him. And at this point, something will happen in Russia. So we need to increase the pressure in this teapot. We need to continue to work on this. And today, these loopholes in sanctions, they're giving possibility for them to avoid it. And we need to strengthen it. That's why this work is important. One example, when we are trying our best, still at this exact point, not very successfully, but I believe we will continue. It's about Mr. Lysin. Mr. Lysin is the wealthiest person of Russia, which means the deepest pocket of Putin, that there is no other way. Mm-hmm. And he is the person, he is metallurgy tycoon, who is producing metal for Ural Vagon Zavod, which is producing tanks to kill Ukrainian women and children today. And very interestingly, he is not under sanctions. None. Nobody's sanctioned. Australia, just one country. And no one else. So no European Union, no United States, no United Kingdom. And that is it's striking. And when we started to push, it was a proposition from European Union officials to put him in the 9th package. Today, the 10th package was announced. But he was proposed to be included in the 9th package of sanctions of European Union against Russia. And very interestingly, Belgium, not Hungary, no, Belgium vetoed it. Because it happened that Lysin is also owner of some metallurgy plants in Belgium. And they don't want to risk with it. So it shows us how important, I think that is a very interesting example, which shows us how much more work could be and should be done.
And how deep the ties with Russia still go. I mean, we have spent 30 years integrating this evil entity into our system, and their money is everywhere. So I mean, when you ask yourself, sort of like, okay, why haven't we sanctioned this person? Where there's smoke, there's almost always fire. You always find some business interest or some. In some cases we overcome these entrenched interests, but in a lot of cases we don't. And there's still German companies doing business with Russia and so on and so forth. Now, I think they should suffer a lot more this year than last year because Germany, for example, is no longer buying natural resources from Russia, right? That's the whole first year, you had Europe continuing to pay record prices for natural resources, and that has ended. But you're absolutely right. You know, you gotta starve them out. I mean, you must really foresee that there will be some sort of palace coup or some level of uprising, elite uprising in Russia. I mean, who would, in your view, trigger this? I mean, where would this come from?
It's a good question. It can come. I'm not sure about oligarchs. Probably it can come from FSB people around Putin and security state. Yeah, so I think it's more possible this way because he is taking them to a disaster. It's clear, and they understand because I think oligarchs, they are not pockets. They're not only pockets of Putin, but also they're pockets of these people, of generals, of FSB, and when they will suffer, these oligarchs, the people like I told you, these generals of FSB will suffer, and they will think, okay, that is maybe this man, I mean Putin, got crazy, and maybe we should do something with this. That is absolutely possible. That is one of possible scenarios, because I don't believe in uprising of Russian people, unfortunately. I'm quite pessimistic about this after 1 year. I was hoping on this on February 24 last year, but when I saw that in the whole Moscow, which is 10 million population city, just 10,000 people came out to the streets, it means like, unfortunately, the Russian society is quite hopeless, but Russian elites, they really can do this. We will see, but that's something we can do. And this another direction, which we already spoke with you, is about these national republics, which also can start uprising. And if they will do it, then the empire would not survive it. So that's, I think, two ways where we need to push, and maybe, thanks God, something will happen.
But I'll tell you, Alexei, one place where there's no hope at all, that the Russian people will rise up.
That's unfortunately.
We should not expect that.
We are not already expecting this, yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, Alexei, great to have you on. Great to see you, man. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. It's a lot of fun. And hopefully we're going to see the end of this thing pretty soon. And of course, the end in Ukrainian victory. Ukrainian victory, 1991 borders.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for all you're doing. God bless America. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.